Welcome to the Miller Report. I'm Suzanne Miller. Politics today is getting so heated. On June 25th, we have a big election coming up. It's a Democratic primary for New York State. And today's guest, guys, is running for District 14, which includes parts of Bronx and Queens. And you ready? He's running against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a.k.a. also known as AOC. So please welcome Marty Dolan to the Miller Report. Wow, Marty, you're a brave man.
I'd be a fool not to do it. It's a great opportunity, and someone needed to do it.
Well, we're going to hear all about it. I read that you're an experienced strategist, investor, financial advisor. But tell our audience from your words, who are you and what do we want to know?
Okay, so I'm the son of an immigrant from Argentina. He came up when Juan Perón came to power. He was the dictator down there. And he settled in Irvington, New York. We had a two-bedroom house. There aren't many two-bedroom houses. It was a very, very small place. And he had his office downstairs. And so we were 9 people in a two-bedroom house. And he had his office downstairs. And he was very entrepreneurial, and he even had his own x-ray machine. So on the weekends, we would play with the x-ray machine when we were kids, which is why my hair kind of looks the way it does. So, it was a classic American immigrant success story, which is his motto was no work, no money. No money, no food, the children go hungry. And that's the story. That's the story, I think, of 99% of the hardworking immigrants and people in America who understand that this country's built on hard work.
Yes.
It's built on, freedom of markets, freedom of religion. And he and my mom, God bless her, they pushed us very hard on the education side. And so I went off to college and I went off to business school. And I just kept going until here I am today.
You're being very modest. I read you were a Harvard grad.
Yep. So my first job on Wall Street was $40 a day. Wow. I earned $40 a day running quotes from one side to the other. And then there was this thing where they had the back office. The back office had a glass wall. And behind the glass wall, they had a lot of Latino guys. And on the other side of the glass wall, they had the guys trading. And there were some mistakes, and I was put in charge of, why are there so many mistakes? And it occurred to me, well, what if we took down the glass wall? And I spoke a little Spanish, and I was able to get the guys from the back office and the traders working together. And I said, listen, let's not leave to go, at the end of the day, let's not run for the train. Let's stay and reconcile them. They're not paper mistakes. These are people's retirement funds. They're trades. People are trading stocks. They're trusting us with their money. Let's not leave the paper lying on the floor. Let's get it all resolved together. That was the reason I was accepted into Harvard Business School, because I wasn't like, a Rhodes Scholar student. I was more of a practical kid. But the people there were impressed by that when I was 21, I was able to kind of turn the organization upside down and come up with this idea of working together.
Maybe you could do that for us here in New York. You could help us work together, because that's really what we all want.
Well, funnily enough, the motto of our campaign is E Pluribus Unum, which means that of many, we are one. And just for your listeners, that was the motto of the United States for 180 years.
United States.
Of many people, we are one. And then in the 1950s, for some reason, they changed it to "In God We Trust." And one of the first things I will do when elected to Congress is I want the motto of the United States to be changed back to "E Pluribus Unum," which basically means let's all work together, which is what we need to do.
Marty, what inspired you to get into this race?
Really, AOC and Jamal Bowman inspired me to get into this race. Because, like everybody, when they were elected, I thought, well, okay, it's a new wave. Let's see how they do. And then I'd known our previous congressman, and I looked at how they were doing, and I couldn't believe it.
Was it like a specific thing, a specific moment, or just the whole?
It was more the opportunity became available for me. So I finished up some stuff in business, and I sold a house, and I was looking for, I'd been renovating houses for the last 40 years. And I thought, I want to renovate another house. And I thought about it, and I said, well, what if I renovated the House of Representatives? And, because, I needed to do something bigger and better. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, why not? These people, they've had 4 years. So in American sports, you've got this concept of your franchise quarterback, the Jets and the Giants or the Knicks. And I thought, these people have had their chance. They've had their 4 years, and they're doing a terrible job. And nobody was stepping forward, and I just decided to step forward.
So you're in District 14, you're running, and tell us what the word on the street is about it. What are you hearing? I know you're knocking on doors, so be candid with us.
So I was really pretty surprised. I started my campaign in Congressional District 16 against Jamal Bowman. So I started there, and then when County Executive George Latimer entered the race, I thought, well, he's got a better chance than I do. I don't want to, let's just accept that. But then I had my team up and running, and I thought, well, really the problem is the leader of the squad. The leader of the squad is the problem. The ideas of the squad, the radical ideas are the problem. So why don't I go there? And then to my great surprise, I got into the district. I got into the streets, and I'm shocked at the response, which is, basically I get hugged by voters all the time. And people who don't know me, they hug me and they say, thank God you're here. I hate her. And, please get her out. Thank God you're here. We've been waiting for someone to come and do this. And they don't know me. So it's not, and again, I'm one of, there's probably thousands of people like me who could do this. I just happen to be the one who's there, but it's a shocking reaction. And this is from people, when you walk up White Plains Road from Castle Hill and you tell people what they're doing and they kind of look at you and then they realize that it's true and they say, if this is true, just, I love you, get her out. And it's been consistently the experience in the Bronx that I would say 80 to 90% of the people are that we talk to say, get her out. And she's never there. And then in Queens, she has a little more support, but it's very consistent across the district.
We'll get into the more specifics about her and her policies, but I want to talk about you and your Hamilton Plan 2.0.
Right.
So what is that, and why did you call it that?
All right, if you go back to basics, so when you stop to think about, well, what is it that you don't like about AOC? And I've tried to make this a race on ideas. And if you go way back to the constitutional principles that we're built on, Hamilton came up with the idea after the War of Independence, after the Revolutionary War, to take all the debts of the states and put them together. And that created the United States. And in a way, it made the federal government supreme. Because from 1776 to 1789, a bit of a history lesson today, there were 13 different colonies. They had different currencies. They went in their own way, pretty much like we're doing today, right? And Hamilton came up with the idea we're going to have a national bank, we're going to have a national currency, and we're going to be stronger together. And that's worked really well. We're not going to be like Europe, where there's always a war between France and Germany and Belgium and so forth. So that's what we need now, because if you think about it, we're kind of, this concept of states' rights has gone too far. It's turned into cities' rights. So I'll give you an example. The city council in the city of New York thinks that they're writing the Constitution. They think they can come up with new definition of human rights. They can think they can defund the police. They think that they can create, zero bail reform. Well, what should the city do? They should take out the trash. They should build the roads. They should take care of the schools. Cities are doing a bad job in the United States because they're trying to do too much, which is something from Wall Street perspective, we call that a conglomerate. So what do you do with a conglomerate? You break it up into pieces and you make it more efficient. So what the Hamilton Plan version 2.0 calls for is that we have to address the northern migration from the cities. So you have 500,000 families who've left New York in the last 3 years. They go to Florida. They go to South Carolina.
They're high taxpayers.
Well, why are they leaving? Let's just, does it have anything to do with the fact that there's a 14% marginal income tax rate? Well, that's exactly what it's about, which is you have a 4% city tax, you have a 10% state tax, you have a $35 trillion federal government debt. And so there's no more money to spend, right? There was this period during COVID when there was a lot of money handed out. You had the student debt cancellation. You had all this stuff when interest rates were 1%. Well, now interest rates are 5%. And my point, what I'm saying is, we're going to have to restack the entire tax system of the United States.
You're saying so much here, Marty. I want to just I want to dumb it down.
Okay.
Because, yes, I think we all agree people have left, the high-income people left, and the city needs help.
Right.
But we need money. So for all these things that we want to do, how are you going to bring in the money?
You need federal support for the northern cities and for California. And the federal government can take over the city's pensions, for example, and then you need a national value-added tax and a national luxury sales tax. So we're going to have to raise $1 trillion a year in order to, close our deficit. And okay, so then you go back to the radicals, and what do they want to do? Well, they want more programs.
Let me just interrupt you. What would be a luxury tax? Give us an example.
A luxury tax would be, for example, if you want to spend $20 million to go watch the Super Bowl, you got your jet, a private suite in Las Vegas, you could spend 25% of that and give it to the federal government because they don't care. They have so much money that they don't care.
So you want to tax the very rich.
You want to tax the very rich. That's 100% what you want to do. And you want to put that into relief for the cities that have been crippled by pension expenses. So in New York, for example, when you spend when you give the New York City $1 of tax money, you only get 70 cents of services because it's going to retirees who are living in Florida. And so the New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, the cities have financial cancer. They've been promises that were made by the governments in the 1970s and 1980s, 1990s, and we'll pay you later. Well, now it's later. And so when you boil it down, what I'm saying is because of working from home, now people can leave. They don't have to stay in the cities.
Right, that's why they left.
And so you have this problem where you have this massive migration away from the cities. The cities are getting worse and worse and worse. It's like they have financial cancer. And what the radicals are saying is, well, here, have a drink. You'll feel better. And it's true, you feel better for a little while, but it's not getting at the root of the issue, which is the cities are set up to fail with their budgets. And so instead of having 10 cops, you have 7. And then crime goes up, and then people leave. And AOC and Bowman and the radicals are like completely the opposite solution of what you need. It's not about their personalities. It's about their training and experience and their wits. They can't figure this out. And this is absolutely the right diagnosis.
So I think every city and every person in every city would agree the most important thing is safety. Everybody wants safety. They want cleanliness. They want safety. They want their kids to feel safe, to go to school. Schools are another issue. But all cities need the middle class. All cities need the firemen, they need the police officers, they need sanitation, they need teachers, and it's harder and harder to keep the middle class in these cities. When you're elected, if you're elected, how are you going to keep the middle class? Because you need that infrastructure to keep the cities vibrant.
We're going to try to cut taxes by 30%. We're trying to take New York City tax from 4% back to 2.5%, New York State tax from 10% back to 7%. Take property taxes in upstate that can be like 3% of the property value. We're going to cut those because we're going to basically restack all the taxes and get the federal government to do their fair share on the activities that New York City shouldn't be performing. So if you want to keep the streets clean, if you want to keep the streets safe, and you make those your priority, those should be your priority. But New York City is also running housing. So for example, you have NYCHA. We want to privatize NYCHA. We want to basically take there's 300,000 apartments. New York City's in the housing business. They have 300,000 apartments on 400 or 500 acres of prime real estate that has been there for 70 years, and it's undermanaged. They're not doing a good job of doing, and there's no path for equity for the residents of the projects. And so you have this class of people who are sitting there, kind of lost, to the modern economy, and the same with the pensioners. So I want to focus the cities in on what you said, which is sanitation, police, fire, infrastructure, schools. and let the cities be good at running cities, not at managing retirements, not at managing housing.
I agree with you. I'm having a tough time figuring out how you're going to do that if you're cutting taxes, because you need the money for the safety for the cities.
You have to do it at the federal level, which is why I'm running for Congress and I'm not running for city council, because you have to get a consensus across the United States that we have to support our cities. And for example, in France,
I like that.
In France, they don't have a special tax to live in Paris.
Right.
I lived in Paris, and they sweep the streets every morning in Paris. In London, you don't have a special tax for living in London. The whole thing has gotten turned upside down, which is that we've taxed our economic engines basically into submission, and then the cities start to fall apart. And you need to reverse that thinking. You need to say, no, New York is the economic engine of the country. Let's bring jobs. Well, wait a second. We can't bring jobs there because the representative from the 14th District has basically destroyed New York's reputation around the world by turning down Amazon. Well, so you need if you think about it, let's say you're executive at Mitsubishi or at Samsung or at Tata. These are countries out in Asia, companies out in Asia. And somebody comes in with a proposal. Let's put a facility somewhere in New York. Well, maybe not so fast. We don't want this crazy representative AOC waving her flag in front of our headquarters. Let's put it in South Carolina. Even if let's say you're the CEO of a New York bank, you're Jamie Dimon. Jamie's from Queens. There's nothing he'd like better than to put jobs in Queens. Well, I can't read his mind, but I know that everybody has to think twice about what they're doing now because of AOC and Jamal Bowman. So instead of this thing being like New York has low taxes and is great for business, it's New York has high taxes. And if you put a plant there, you're going to get your chops busted by the local representative. Well, this is just nuts.
Well, that's just a huge issue. There are a lot of companies. I've had the head of real estate from Wells Fargo here. They're building. There are offices coming up. The real estate market is doing very well for a lot of these major companies. We do want to keep them here. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go on that saga that New York has done. I do believe that the companies want to be here. They will be here, and it will continue. But we need law and order. Without safety, we have nothing. And when the police stop coming and you can't get people to join the academy, that is the biggest issue. And it all comes down to this bail reform. So if you become elected, it's really a state thing. How are you going to get the federal government to change the bail reform in New York State?
When Ed Koch was mayor, he didn't say it's not my job. He said everything was his job. He stood out on the Brooklyn Bridge and he encouraged people. Okay, when Giuliani was mayor, he didn't say it's not my job to stop the window washers on a federal highway. He figured out a way to get it done.
So what will your way be?
Okay, so I've written the headline for June 26th. So June 26th is the day after the election, and it's like AOC is out, Dolan upset victory. So what's going to happen is Eric Adams is going to change his story in a minute, because he's got an election coming next year. And when we defeat AOC and when Latimer defeats Bowman, Eric Adams is going to change his tune on a dime. And he's going to come out and say, well, we need more law and order. And the voters have spoken.
I believe he's trying. I believe he has said that he wants more police officers. He's doing his very best. It's just that the federal government's not giving it to him.
I've made the case that the best thing for Eric Adams is for me to defeat AOC and send a signal that if the voters want Eric Adams to change, they should change the representative in the 14th District, because it'll be a clear signal to him to get it in gear. He's a cop. He knows what to do. He just needs help from the voters to do it. Second thing that's going to happen is there's going to be 100 people like me coming out of the woodwork. Maybe they're going to be in real estate. Maybe they're going from banking. Maybe they're wherever they're going to come. And they're going to say, well, if this guy can do it, if he can defeat AOC, maybe I should run for the city council. Maybe instead of having, Tiffany Caban and getting elected, we should have some people in with relevant experience. And so first thing is Eric Adams is going to change his tune, although I think he knows what to do. He just can't do it. He's hemmed in by these radicals. Secondly, you're going to have 100 people come out of the woodwork and say, you know what? I'm going to get involved. If Marty can do it, then, Marty can do it. Anybody can do it. And then the Democratic Party is going to change, because, it's going to revitalize the Democratic Party's campaign. They're going to say, well, you know what? We're not have to be beholden to the radical wing. Let's get out and say the Democratic Party is finding its way. And then people around the world are going to look and say, okay, so New York finally gets it. Like they're turning things around. So as a congressional representative, it isn't exactly what you do, it's what you represent. And if it's really not up to me to change things. It's up to about 30,000 voters in the Bronx and Queens to get off their butts and vote. And if they do, they'll have a profound impact on the United States, on the Democratic Party, and on New York City, because you're not just electing a representative here who's going to be good for your community. You're sending a signal to everybody that we are New York and we know better than this sham that we've been given for the last 4 years.
I want to talk about voting in a minute because it seems to be impossible. I think I'm an educated person. I don't know how to vote when I get there. These polls make it impossible for voting. But I want to just stay on something that's personal to me and people that I know in my community, the Jewish vote. It doesn't make any sense to me that people like yourself are not getting the Jewish vote. I mean, AOC has actually said she's saying that Netanyahu is a war criminal. He should not address Congress. And yet I don't think that you're being supported by the Jewish people. Are you? Tell us about that.
So, each district is different. So in the 16th district, there's a high proportion of Jewish voters. In the 17th district, there's a high in Williamsburg. In the 14th district, there once was a Jewish community, and it's really been replaced. So, for example, in the Bronx, we've got very high Dominican community, very high Puerto Rican community. Let me talk about what they want. They want law and order. It's unbelievable that people think that community wants handouts. That's the last thing they want. They want law and order. They don't like the illegal immigration because if you're Dominican, you had to go through the process. And then obviously in Queens, it's you have every nation there. The most recent immigrants there legally have been from Asia. They want law and order. They don't want to buy a bottle of shampoo on the street for $1 from somebody who didn't pay his taxes instead of buying it from the store. So the common theme across the Bronx and Queens, it's like a mosaic of different nationalities, but there's almost no Jewish voters in the district. I would say it's less than a few thousand, although once the Bronx was.
Is that because there's no Jewish people, or they're just not voting?
There are not a lot of Jewish people in the Bronx and Queens.
Okay,
and so they've been very supportive of me, the ones that are there. What we haven't been successful doing, and what the Jewish community hasn't done, is raise money for us. So they've really focused their financial resources on the Latimer race. I've made the case that you're good there. Like you're probably going to win that race. How about helping us out a little bit? And we're still let's just say we're still working on that. Would be the polite way to say it. The point is too. I think that there are two different races. In the case of Bowman, you have somebody who's just not competent. He's not competent. He shouldn't be in Congress. In the case of AOC, she's the more important target. She's the leader of the squad. She is the one where if we can replace her, when we replace her, the whole thing is over. Like tomorrow, everything is different. If Jamal Bowman is in Congress or not, he's Congress. It's just one congressman getting upgraded. When we defeat AOC, the whole situation changes. In a week, we could have one of these moments where people are like, wow, everything changed. So we'd like more support from the Jewish communities outside of our district. And I think the ones that are in our district have been, they're 100% behind us, but there's only a few thousand of them.
Is it true she won't debate you?
It is 100% true that not only did she say she won't debate me, she said she would not dignify my campaign by debating me. So we're not surprised by that because I think she's a coward. I don't think she has good political policies. I don't think she's been a good representative for her district. She doesn't go to community meetings. She doesn't take care of her own people. We've had 2 cops shot in East Elmhurst. We had 2 teenagers, barely teenagers, assaulted in Queens in details that are too graphic to repeat here. And, she's going to Las Vegas on Thursday night. So I think it's an insult that I have 12,000 people who've signed my petition to be on the ballot, and she says she won't debate me. But at this point, I don't need to hear from her anymore. I don't think the people need to hear from her anymore. We've seen enough. We've had 6 years of tape on her. I think it's just time for her to go. Like, we don't have to discuss this anymore.
But what points would you bring up if she would debate you?
I would talk about her complete lack of understanding about, finances in public government. She just wants more programs. She just wants to feed people little programs, little breadcrumbs. And for example, in the projects, she's like, here, have a playground. I'm offering people free equity in their apartments. I'm saying that when we privatize NYCHA, if you've lived in the building for 50 years, you own your apartment for free.
That's great.
Okay? I'm saying...
That's great. People will care about the community.
We don't need a path to home ownership. You've earned it with sweat equity. I'm saying we should get out of the housing business and recognize the terrible sacrifices and resources that the people have put in. And she's giving them a playground. It's like, here, you're fine. Have a playground. Play with your kids in the playground. And in another 50 years, the people will still be in the projects. These are the constituents. If you drive along the Bruckner Expressway, or if you're smart, you drive along Bruckner Boulevard to get around the traffic, there's building after building after building of people living in suspended animation economically with no path out, no path to home ownership, and she's doing nothing for them. So that's the first point I would make. The second point I would make is she doesn't understand anything about taxes or finance, and she doesn't understand the financial cancer that all the cities have. And then the last point I would make is, if you go back to the Founding Fathers, we're set up in a system where you pretty much have to get to majority approval for anything. 50%, some cases 60%. And you have to have that because the way the Senate rolls over and the governors roll over, you have to have support for like 5 or 6 years to get an idea through Congress. She's constantly promoting ideas that are popular with 10 to 20% of the people that have no chance of being made into law. But your job is writing law. You're in a legislator. Now, if you're Martin Luther King Jr. and you're doing that, good for you. But you don't belong in Congress. Maybe Martin Luther King Jr. would not have been a great congressman, but he was sure good at what he did. And I think that's the right place for her. She's got great energy. She's trying. I just think she's in the wrong job. I think she should be on TV. She could write a book. She could be a national figure, but she can't convert an idea into law that makes any sense. And that's the purpose of being in a legislator.
Well, it's so interesting because I think that when she was elected by your district, and she was an unknown at the time, so how did she get in?
I think that's a classic story. That's what we're doing. You wear out your shoes. So you pretty much go door to door. You talk to the people. You find out, what their interests are. A lot of times you can't help them. One guy said to me, he goes, I'll sign your petition if you make a law that says you can't cut people off when you get off the highway. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that for you, but I still some other things I could do for you, like get you a free apartment. So you just have to go see the people. The number one thing you have to do is listen. So when you go to the community boards, you're not even allowed, in the community board meetings, you're not allowed to go as a challenger. You can go as an incumbent. There's a huge advantage. But as a challenger, you can only go, you can't say anything because it's a community board. You have no status. We should change that. Then they have the neighborhood associations. You should go to them. But then again, they're not-for-profits. They can't endorse anybody. But it's like climbing a mountain. You just pretty much find a little way up here and a little way up there. And the next thing you know, for example, I've been in the Bronx, in the Bengali community. I've been to the mosque 20 times. Then they say, stop it, we got it. Like we know you care. So
that's incredible. So she's out. She has a bigger name than you, much bigger. She's got way more money than you do, and you're doing door to door, and you're making headway. This is congratulations.
Hold on for a second. In our surveys, if you survey Co-op City, which is the largest residential address in the United States, half the people don't know her. Half the people don't know what the squad is. And you go down through the Bronx, you go down to Castle Hill, where I spent a ton of time at Castle Hill. The people don't know her. And the reason they don't know her is because she doesn't go to the ShopRite. She doesn't go to the Western Beef supermarket. She gets on a plane and she goes to Pittsburgh.
People know her name, Marty.
To campaign.
People know AOC. They know her name. But I think a bigger issue, and I started to talk about this earlier, Marty, I'm an intelligent person. How are you going to get people to vote, first of all, and how are you going to get them to actually show up and know how to use these ballots? I think I'm smart. I go in there. I don't know how to figure it out. So how are you going to tackle that in your campaign? I think it's a really good idea for you to make it simpler or to explain to people in your campaign how they do this.
You're 100% right on that. And you look at all the modern technology, and it's good there's early voting. We like that. Okay, that's a good start. But the form, like it's given to you like a Roman sea scroll or something like that. And it comes back to one of the things I'm talking about, which is this idea that we have states' rights. It's a bit of a wrong idea. Like, it's good to have decentralization, but we should take the best ideas from different states and fertilize them, across the states. You talked about how they do voting in Florida. If they do voting in Florida better than they do it in New York, we should bring it to New York. I think that's a really worthwhile idea to look at, because at the end of the day, the federal government, the Congress, is determined by how hard it is to vote in New York.
Right.
And so in our campaign, you end up with, let's go to the primary voters because they know how to do it.
Maybe you should educate people about that it's going to be difficult, and maybe a suggestion would be to take them through it so when they get to vote, because some people, I think, are intimidated to even vote.
When was the last time you saw an educational video from the Board of Elections on how to vote?
So put that on your campaign.
100% you should do that.
Okay, so we gave you a good idea. So I wish you luck. I thank you for coming on. I think you're brave, courageous. I think your ideas are spot on, and I'm hoping that you come through. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marty.